Have you ever been in a conversation that just leaves you feeling dizzy, confused, and just totally exhausted? You know, like you've just run a mental marathon, but you can't even remember what the original topic was? It's a really unsettling feeling. And you know what? It's often not an accident. Today, we're diving into a deliberate psychological tactic designed to do just that. It's called attention hijacking, and just understanding it is the very first step to defending yourself against it. We believe that clear thinking is an active choice. Yet the manipulator can systematically overload our cognitive functions until rational analysis becomes impossible. This is the dark psychological paradox of attention hijacking, a strategy of cognitive depletion. I mean, think about that for a second. It's a profound, kind of chilling idea that your own mind, your ability to reason, can be weaponized against you. So, to really get a handle on this, here's our roadmap. We'll start with the thinking paradox, then define what attention hijacking actually is. We'll look at how it works on your brain, explore the psychology behind it, and then, most importantly, talk about how to reclaim your mental space. And I'll wrap up with a really empowering takeaway. Okay, so let's start with that core conflict, the thinking paradox. This is the whole foundation of the problem. It's this idea that your rational mind, which is supposed to be your greatest asset, can be turned into a liability. It's a situation where the more you try to think, the more you try to solve the problem or clarify a point, the more tangled up and exhausted you get. You're using your logic to solve what you think is a problem, but it's not a problem. It's a maze, and it's designed specifically to burn out your logic engine. So this brings us to the actual name for this thing. Because, we're not just talking about a tough conversation or a heated argument here. We're talking about a very specific and kind of sneaky control tactic that's built to short-circuit your ability to think. So what is attention hijacking, really? Let's break down the official definition. Attention hijacking is a systematic cognitive abuse tactic. Now, the two key words there are systematic and deliberately. This isn't just random emotional chaos. It's a full-on strategy. It's designed to completely overload your working memory. That's kind of like your brain's temporary scratch pad for processing info with this constant barrage of intense demands until you just can't think anymore. And here's the point that changes everything. The goal isn't to win an argument. It's not to prove a point. The core goal is to get control by depleting you cognitively. The manipulator doesn't win by being right. They win by making you so mentally exhausted that you don't even know what's right anymore. That fatigue you feel, that's not a side effect. The fatigue is the objective. So what does this actually look like in practice? Well, the tactics are probably going to sound maddeningly familiar. First, you've got crisis manufacturing, where some tiny issue gets blown up into a 3-hour catastrophe. Then there's topic hijacking, where you try to talk about one thing, and suddenly you're debating 5 completely unrelated things from years ago. And then there's question bombing, just a relentless stream of questions that aren't meant to get answers, but to just overwhelm you and throw you off balance. And when you understand this, it reframes everything. All that confusion, the circular arguments, that feeling that you're going crazy, that isn't just a side effect of a heated talk. You have to realize this. The chaos isn't a byproduct. The chaos is the strategy. It's the tool they're using to shut down your brain. All right, so now let's get into the real core of this explainer, the actual mechanism. We're going to look at the neurological pattern of attack step by step to see exactly what's going on inside your brain when this hijack is happening. The whole process really breaks down into a clear 3-stage attack. It all starts with what we call load induction. That's the initial grab for your attention. That leads directly to cognitive depletion, which is where your thinking is basically forced to a stop. And it all ends in default mode, which is where they establish control. Okay, stage 1, load induction. Think of this as the opening attack. The manipulator starts this intense, and this is the critical part, continuous flood of information or emotional chaos. This could be that endless circular argument about something totally trivial. The goal is just to dump so much data into your brain so fast that your working memory gets overloaded, like instantly. Now, to really get what's happening here, it helps to use an analogy. Let's think of your brain as a computer. Your prefrontal cortex, the part right behind your forehead, that's your CPU, your central processor. It handles all the rational thought, the logic, the planning. Then you have your working memory, and that's like the computer's RAM. It's the active thinking space you use to juggle information in real time. And this brings us right to stage 2, cognitive depletion. See, just like a computer's RAM, your working memory has a limited capacity. That sustained overload from the first stage keeps your mental RAM running at 100%.
This just burns through the limited energy that your prefrontal cortex, your CPU, has. And eventually, just like an overworked processor, it overheats and it crashes. And the result of that system crash? It's a state of decision fatigue and total cognitive collapse. This is that feeling of mental fog we talked about. It's when you can't form a coherent thought, you can't make a simple choice, and you just feel completely and utterly drained. This isn't a sign of weakness. It's the predictable, biological result of your brain's rational center being forced offline.
So what happens when that rational prefrontal cortex goes offline? Well, the brain doesn't just shut down. It defaults to an older, faster, more primitive system, the limbic system. This is our reactive emotional brain. It's not interested in logic. It is hardwired to find the absolute quickest path to relieve stress and end the threat.
And in these kinds of high-stress conflicts, the brain's quickest path to relief is often what's known as the Fawn response. You've heard of fight, flight, and freeze. Well, this is the fourth one. It's the instinct to just appease the source of the threat through compliance. It's simply agreeing or giving in or apologizing just to make the overwhelming chaotic noise finally stop. Okay, so now that we get the how, let's pivot to the why. What are the psychological drivers on both sides of this equation? This is where we look at the manipulator's goal versus the target's vulnerability.
And right here, you can see the toxic push and pull of this whole dynamic. The manipulator's goal is really two things: supply maximization, getting their needs for attention and control met, and autonomy prevention. They keep you bogged down in chaos so you never have the mental space to think for yourself. And on the other side, the target's vulnerability is often a strength that gets twisted against them, that natural human drive to find a resolution. But when every problem is an unsolvable trap, that drive eventually just leads to learned helplessness. Okay, we've analyzed the problem, the mechanism, and the psychology. Now, let's shift gears and talk about empowerment. We're moving to the most important part, the actual actionable defense protocol for taking back your mental space. This is the question that really matters most, isn't it? Once you start to recognize this pattern, how do you actually break the cycle and stop the hijack dead in its tracks? The defense is a three-step process. It's pretty straightforward. First, you have to identify the cognitive load. You have to recognize that feeling of being overwhelmed, not as your failure, but as their tactic. Second, you assert a time boundary. You have to stop the flood. And third, you externalize the data to free up your own mental horsepower. Asserting a boundary is the critical circuit breaker here. And this right here is a script you can actually use. It's not aggressive, it's just a factual statement about your cognitive state, saying, I am too overwhelmed to discuss this right now. We will resume in 30 minutes. Does something absolutely crucial. It gives your prefrontal cortex, your rational brain, the time it desperately needs to reboot and come back online. And the final step is to externalize the data. So during that pause, you take the burden off your brain. You write down the facts of that crazy circular argument in a log or a journal. What this does is it moves the problem from your finite, overloaded working memory to an external, objective source. It lets you see the illogical patterns clearly without having to mentally juggle them all at once. And that frees you up to actually think again. And all of this brings us to our final empowering takeaway. This is about so much more than just a defense tactic. It's about a fundamental shift in your mindset. It's about refusing to participate in the chaos. So, let's just boil all of this down to the one essential thing to remember. What feels like random, frustrating chaos is anything but. Attention hijacking is the deliberate strategy they use to grab your focus so you literally stop thinking clearly. The pattern is always the same. The load induction, the chaos, is designed to force cognitive depletion. That exhaustion is what guarantees your brain will shift into default mode, where compliance just becomes the path of least resistance. It's simple. Chaos leads to exhaustion, and exhaustion secures compliance. But here it is. This is the most powerful part of this entire explainer. This is the key that unlocks everything. Awareness breaks the loop. See, the tactic only works when you're caught inside it, totally unaware of what's happening. The moment you can feel that cognitive load, that sense of being overwhelmed, and identify it as their tactic, it loses all of its invisible power. By naming it and by asserting that time boundary, you don't just pause the conversation, you stop the entire manipulative pattern cold. And this is the thought I really want to leave you with. The exhaustion you feel is the intended goal. The chaos is the technique. And because of that, the most radical act of self-preservation is to simply stop.
You reclaim your mind, your clarity, and your autonomy the very moment you've refused to keep up with their manufactured crisis.